scramble. So I think maybe we all could just do with a moment of silence and an out breath and a realization that we're here together and there's nothing else to do right now than but just be here and be together and enjoy the moment with each other. So if you can, if you're not driving, I invite you to close your eyes and take a deep breath and breathe out through the mouth just to release. And then let's just start with the mantra Om and we chant it 3 times together. Let's take a deep breath. Thank you. Welcome, beloved Sadhviji. Wow, what a beautiful meeting to have.
So beautiful to be with you. Such a joy. It brings me immediately back to sitting on the banks of Ganga with you and singing and chanting and praying and loving.
It took you writing a whole book for us to get together here. I'm sorry for that.
It did. Yes.
But
it's all right. It was worth it.
But I'm so happy that you wrote this book. So Sadhviji, just when is your book coming out? It's coming out like it's not quite.
So it's available already right now on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon right now. It is actually coming out in bookstores on the 3rd of August. So we're just, I guess 2.5 weeks-ish before official pub date. Yeah.
So this is such a gift because, I mean, I don't know about you, but I love so much life stories and autobiographies. That's my favorite kind of book to read because it's so real and it's so incredible what, how life flow unfolds for people in such different ways and unexpected ways. And you often feel like you read something and you feel like only this situation is enough to instill trust in me forevermore that everything is taken care of and everything is as it should be. And I have no idea about the great mysteries of life. So Sadhviji's book is one of those books, where you just feel, wow, this is, Sadhviji could have never made this up. She could have never manifested this. She could have not, she couldn't have had like in The Secret, manifest your life or dream up what she just wouldn't have thought of that. And it's way beyond her wildest imagination and dreams and hopes. And so it's a really inspiring book. I haven't finished it yet, so I'm still enjoying it. Which is nice. I still have more to enjoy. And,
well, it took me 50 years to live it and almost 10 to write it. So take your time reading it.
Yes. So now reading it, I'm happy that we can use this time to encourage you to read it and to enjoy it, and also to have this time together to talk about it, because while reading it, I realized how much parallels there are between you and I, which I don't even think this talk is really about that, because I feel this talk is really about your incredible life path. But just sometimes we can insert a little side note, because I just realized, wow, we always felt like sisters in a way, but I didn't realize that there were actual parallels, even in a life story, that connect us, and that makes it very, very colorful. So how did you, I think my most burning question is, so you write this autobiography, and you are very candid. You write so many very intimate details and things maybe you've never. Yet that's what I always wondered. Would you say this to some stranger on the train? Maybe you would say it to a stranger on the train, or how does it feel to write something that can be read by anybody? And how do you choose what to share and what not to share, and how does that feel?
So it's really interesting, because when I sat to write it, I really thought it was just going to be kind of a longer version of my TED Talk, which, because I've been in India 25 years. And of course, over 25 years, people say, tell me your story. And you develop sort of a way of telling it. And you've got your 2-minute elevator version, and then you have your 18-minute TED Talk version. And they're true, of course. And yet they are true within, the confines of 2 minutes in an elevator, or 18 minutes of a TED Talk, or 10 minutes over a cup of tea. And they are, in those circumstances, it's much more just about people's kind of curiosity of, oh, how did you don't look Indian. How are you the one here leading this, teaching this, guiding this? Like, who are you and how did you get here? And in that case, the short version really is fine. But with the book, what I realized was exactly what you were saying at the beginning about reading autobiographies, is that my goal in writing this book was not about simply sharing a fascinating story. That's fine to do for a short period of time, but the hundreds of hours that went into this book, I never would have done it. And that's why it took me so long to do it, because in the beginning, I thought, oh, this is just a fascinating story. I'm not going to take this time to do it. And it wasn't until I finally was convinced and realized, and everybody I knew was pushing to do it, because I realized, and everybody realized, that it wasn't the story just that was fascinating and interesting and exciting, but actually it was so inspiring for people because of the intimate details, because of the way that I had struggled, the challenges that I had, what I went through. Because today, so many people feel not good enough to be spiritual. People feel unworthy. People feel impure. People feel like, I hit the snooze button when my alarm went off at 4 o'clock this morning. I'm kind of disqualified for the day. And we look at spiritual people, at spiritual leaders, at spiritual teachers, and they've always seemed cut from a different cloth. And for me, the real core motivation here was to share with people the fact that I'm not cut from a different cloth, that I know struggle, I know challenge, I know addiction, I know frustration, I know desire, I know all of that, I know patterns of ignorance. And by incredible blessings and incredible grace, I know freedom, and I know deep joy and deep truth and deep presence of God and deep oneness with God. And what I really hope people get from the book, and for me, the main motivation in writing it, is for people to know as they read it, oh, well, okay, so she knows this difficulty I face, or she knows this thing I struggle with. And yet, here she is living in this way, so connected to God as this spiritual being. It means I can do it also. And that's really what I feel like our world needs so much today, is people to know that they are open to grace, that grace is there for them, that spirituality is there for them, that it doesn't matter what's happened to them. It doesn't matter what they've done. It doesn't matter what they've struggled with. Grace is there, and grace doesn't discriminate. And that, it doesn't have to be as a sannyasi, as a renunciant living on the banks of Ganga, of course, wherever you are, that grace is there for you. So that was really the motivation to write it. And in terms of the person on the train, no, I probably wouldn't get into this with the person on the train, because it's not necessary. The deep details are there, not as a story, not as, hey, this is an identity, but it's there as in, you, the reader, should know that I know struggle, that I know conflict, that I know challenge, so that when your voice in your own head says, well, awakening is fine for them, but I can't do it because I have been abused, or I can't do it because I struggle with this, or I can't do it because I'm disqualified for this reason, that you'll look at the book and you'll realize, oh, wait, there is no disqualification. So that's what it's there for. And of course, if the guy on the train says, hey, I'm struggling with this and I don't feel like I can access God, or I'm struggling with that and I don't feel like I can access peace and freedom, what do you think? Then sure, I might share it. But freedom is freedom from all of the identities. So whether it's a freedom from this identity or freedom from that identity, it's an identity from all of it's a freedom from all of the identities.
It's so interesting, because you know how the mind works. Like sometimes I feel like I haven't had those struggles. I had an intense father who was very, very intense and strict and all that, and I had a heartbreak, which was a difficult situation. But I didn't have huge dark night of the soul in intense experiences. And sometimes I thought, oh, that's what qualifies you for spiritual life, because you've gone really through the dark and you've really faced, and so it's just, we always think something is not quite right,
Yes.
but it's I'm not, how do I see? There were things, I'm sure, in there which maybe also your family, did you talk with your family? What can I share? How do you feel about that with your mom, with your father? Or did you just, do you want to talk a little bit about your connection with your father and your mother?
Sure. Well, my biological father has since passed away. When I was writing the book, he was still alive. And it certainly was in my mind of, this is going to be interesting. But in the perfection of the working of the universe, it never actually became an issue, because he passed away a few years ago. And so we were able to have that goodbye, that ending, without the book even being an issue or a topic at all. And my mom and my dad are both, they know about the book. We've always had a very, very open family. And I was really always raised to value truth. You know, in my house growing up, it didn't matter what you did, but if you came clean, if you admitted it, it was okay.
That's beautiful.
But it also didn't matter how small it was. If you lied about it, there was hell to pay. Tiny little nothing. But if you lied, it was over. And so I really was raised in this environment of truth. Truth is the most important thing. And where there is truth, everything is right. And so the idea of hiding or censoring or any of that, it was never part of my family. I did not come from one of those sweep it under the rug, you know, big fight in the house, but the neighbor rings the doorbell, hello, how are you type of, you know, families where suddenly you go from Jekyll and Hyde back and forth. For me, it was never like that. If my parents were in a fight and somebody knocked on the door, they were going to yell at the person who opened the door. So yeah, it was really a very open and very anchored in truth upbringing. And when I came to India, of course, was very interesting because in India, I learned the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, where Lord Krishna says that right speech is speech that is true, but that's also kind and beneficial. And so it was a whole new element for me to right speech, that it's not just because it's true, it's okay. It has to also be kind and beneficial. And for me, that was really the standard by which I held that which got shared is, yes, it's true. And yes, there's even more things that are true. But is it all actually beneficial to the reader? Is it kind to those about whom the situation was? And to just really make sure that it's all, of course, true, but that also it's all beneficial and kind.
That's beautiful. So your mom, did she read the book when she's read it before, obviously?
Yeah. She read it not as I was writing it, but I sent them the final manuscript probably a year ago.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So do you want to tell about the story with your father, just to give a little glimpse into that, because it's such a strong part of the story?
Well, sure. It's interesting, though, because I don't think about it as a story about my father. I think about it as a story of grace and a story of spiritual teaching and a story of freedom and letting go. My father, my biological father, was a key part in catalyzing an event that needed to take place in order for me to have that spiritual teaching. But yeah, in very early childhood, I had been sexually abused by my biological father, who, by God's grace, actually, my parents split when I was very young, and my mom remarried the most wonderful man in the world who became my dad. But the pain of that early childhood abuse and then separation was something that really, really plagued me a lot as I grew up. As you can imagine, it's not an easy thing. And it was something that I held on to really as an identity of I am an abuse survivor. And when I got to India and I met my guru, Puja Swamiji, I had the opportunity to ask him a question. And I asked him a question about fear, because I always was struggling with kind of low-grade stress, tension, anxiety, fear. And I asked him about that. And he said, you fear because you don't trust. And I said, well, I don't trust because, and I gave him my whole story, which up until that time, had just gotten people to say, oh, you poor thing, come here, cry on my shoulder, like that. And it got me lots and lots of kudos and pats on the back for everything that I was achieving. Like, oh my God, you are so successful and so accomplished. And yet you had this trauma. Wow, you must be, this great person. So that was what I had gotten from everyone else. And Puja Swamiji just looks at me and he says, are you going to take that to the grave? I was 25. And I was like, no. And he says, well, so are you going to give it up on your deathbed? And I said, no, of course not. He said, how about a week before you die? And I'm thinking, is he telling me I'm going to die soon? Like, is this some kind of, premonition that I'm about to be on my deathbed? Because otherwise at 25, you don't really think much about your deathbed. And then he says, how about a month before you die? And I just was staring at him like, what are you trying to say? Am I going to die soon? And he looks at me and he says, you're waiting for someone to draw the line. You are waiting for someone to come in and say, okay, you can be free of this. He said, no one will. It's up to you. You can carry this identity, this pain to your deathbed. You can give it up on your deathbed. You can give it up a week before you die, a month before you die. Or he says, or you can give it up tonight. And I'm like, tonight? And he says, yes, tonight. We have this beautiful lighting ceremony on the banks of the sacred river. And you take the oil lamp and you offer it to the river. And then after that, I want you to walk into the river. And I want you to take water from the river, from Mother Ganga, hold it in your hands and offer all of your pain, all of the anger, all of the resentment. Offer that all to Mother Ganga. And she will take it. And at that time, I was in the middle of a PhD program in psychology at a very prestigious, APA accredited university program. And I spent the next several hours thinking, and I was writing in my journal also, just give it to the river. He says that I should just give it to the river, as though somehow this were like an apple core rather than all of that I was struggling with. And I really thought it was sweet. I thought it was quaint. I thought it was cute, but I certainly didn't think it was going to work. I had only been in India, I don't know, maybe a week, maybe 10 days maximum. I had known Puja Swamiji just a few days. And I thought, this is really sweet, but thank God I actually have therapists and doctors and people who know the process and know all of this work that I've got to do to finally be able to manage the pain. Because that's as best as we're told we can find, is an ability to manage something. Freedom is never something I heard anyone talk about. Managing it is all we are. That's kind of the highest option that you're given. So afternoon turns to evening, and I have this moment that I will be so grateful for the rest of this life and every life, which is, I said, okay, look, it may make no sense. And yet, it was given to you by a man, worshipped as the embodiment of the divine, by a being in whose presence you feel closer to God, truth, love the universe than you ever have in anyone's presence. And I didn't know why I had come to India anyway. And so I thought, well, who knows? Maybe this is what the universe sent you for. And so I took a vow in that moment that I just would do it sincerely. I didn't think it was going to work. I didn't have any very high hopes, but I said, I'm going to do it sincerely. And I stood in the water after the arti, and I held the water, and I pulled out of me everything I could think of associated with this that caused pain. And I offered it to the river. And she took it. She took it. And Deva, it's amazing because I spent weeks and even months with this very psychoanalytically trained part of my brain searching for it. I couldn't believe it had gone. And I kept looking for it, and I kept trying to kind of trigger myself back into anxiety, back into fear, back into those feelings. And I couldn't do it. Like it just was gone. And there was still, of course, a deep compassion for the young girl to whom this had happened, a deep awareness that it should not have happened, but a freedom from the idea that she was me. And in that river, I was able to forgive him. I literally called forth his image as I stood there with the moon right in front of me, and I just called forth his image. And I held it in my mind's eye until I could say, I forgive you. And in that moment, I was able to see a man who was troubled and haunted and sick and all of the things that would make someone do something like that. And I was able to really, really forgive him. And it's been such an extraordinary blessing. And I share it in the book because I don't want anybody to ever think, well, I can't forgive this because it's really bad. And so, I actually had people say to me, you may not want to talk about this in the book. Like, this is really heavy and this may make people think differently about you. And, you're this revered spiritual leader, teacher, and, this may change how people think. And I thought, well, if I, from the platform that I have, sweep this under the rug because we don't talk about it, because this is somehow a shameful thing, then I become part of the problem, not part of the solution. And on a deep level, for everyone who has struggled with anything, I wanted people to know, yes, I get it. Yes, I know pain, I know struggle. And you can be free. And you can actually give that to the Ganga, to God, to the universe, to the fire, to the tree in your backyard, and be free.
That's so beautiful, and that's that's grace. That's incredible. Good karma, maybe on your part, or it's grace. It's a blessing. It's a gift. It's huge. And how can other people invite a moment like that? What do they do? Because we often get that question: where do I go? Where do I find my guru? Where do I find my ashram? What do you say?
So the first and most important piece is opening of the heart. Lots of people come to India every year. Lots of people come to Rishikesh every year. And they go back carrying pain and anger and patterns that they came with, just like they go back with their same, check-in luggage. The first and most important piece is to open the heart and to really decide that my freedom is more important to me than whatever I'm gaining from this identity. And so a lot of us, we hold on to whatever our pain may be, whether it's something like this, or whether it's just, as you say, a deep heartbreak. The regular, ups and downs of life, we all struggle. Whether it's just our own internal voice that tells us we are not good enough, that is a struggle. That is conflict. You don't actually need someone outside to abuse you. Most of us do a very good job of abusing ourselves very well. So that's also violence. And so even if what you struggle with is only your own voice in your head and no one outside has ever done anything, it's still that struggle. And you still have an identity that is wrapped around that. And that is the key part, is we have to be prepared to open our heart and say, freedom is the most important. My freedom, my ability to accept this invitation that the universe has offered me to live in freedom, to live in joy, to live in love. That is the most important thing. And there is no identity, no grudge that is worth holding that's going to prevent me from that. And so whether we identify as someone who has been abused or betrayed or lied to or cheated or discriminated against or abandoned, whatever it may be, whether we identify as an alcoholic, a drug addict, a bulimic, an anorexic, a gambler, whether we identify as someone suffering from depression or anxiety, or all of the different labels we give ourselves, they're identities. And then we live within the confines of that. Well, I am, fill in the blank, therefore, this is why I am not stepping up to the plate of my life. This is why I am not living in joy, living in love, living in freedom. We have a ready-made excuse. It's like, oh, didn't step up to the plate of your life today? No problem. Pull your excuse out of the bag. And neither you nor anyone could possibly expect you to step up to the plate of your life. So it's a great crutch. And in order to really be free, the first and most important thing is to actually ask yourself, is freedom more important to me than having a ready-made excuse? Because freedom's going to take away that ready-made excuse. And what that means is then if you don't show up in love, in truth, in compassion, you're not going to have a ready-made excuse. And that's when you get to just say, okay, God, give me the strength to show up better tomorrow. Thank you, God, for the sun that rises tomorrow, so I have another opportunity. But we then have to acknowledge it. So step number 1 is just open the heart and really commit yourself that freedom is your highest goal. More than having an identity, more than having a ready-made excuse, more than living in a box of predetermined habitual reactions to the world. Because also what freedom requires of us then is every minute we're responding to that moment. When you're stuck in an identity, you've got these kind of ready-made, like, this is how I interact with the worldness. And that's easier than having to show up in presence and in consciousness and in awareness with every moment. So we decide that freedom is our highest goal, more important than any identity, any box, any preconceived notion, any ready-made excuse. Number 2, anchor yourself in love. That for me has just been the key. And Deva, that's one of the reasons that I love being with you so much, because it feels like such a love fest. And for me, love is the way to experience that presence of God, that presence of truth, that ashram within. Because you've lived in an ashram for a long time. I've lived in an ashram for a long time. We know very well that simply living in an ashram does not in and of itself grant you free of anger, jealousy, competition, ego, misery. So it's not about I'll find my ashram and then that magic wand will, be on my life. Wherever you are living, you have to keep that heart open and you have to anchor in love. And yes, an ashram provides a beautiful container in which to do that, which is very, very sacred and a very precious gift. And of course, everyone is welcome to come to Parmarth Niketan on the banks of Ganga in Rishikesh to be there with us. But until travel is safe and until that time in your life is exactly perfect, find that ashram within, and it will guide you to the outer ashram because it'll pull you away. Most of us, we get so wrapped up in what we should be doing, keeping up with others, what our culture, what our society, what our parents say we should be doing, what our social media feed says we should be doing, what the billboards we see say we should be doing. We get so caught up in that we don't actually listen to that pull of our hearts. And so if you can find that within, it will then pull you to where you need to be. And there's so much to say, but lastly, I would say on this, let go. Letting go for me has really been the key. We let go of anger. We let go of grudges. And you let go of that identification, as I was saying in the beginning, of all of that. And just allow that flow of the universe. When you meditate, just connect yourself to that divine flow. When you chant, connect yourself to that divine flow. People should just turn on you chanting mantras or you chanting Om and literally just feel that flow of the divine universe through them. Because that sound connects us to the universe.
Yeah, it's really preparing the soil. Like, for example, in your case, you didn't actually really take all those steps one by one. You came to India reluctantly, kind of, you like the food, that's why you go there. I'm vegetarian, here's a vegetarian country. That sounds practical, and then you end up in this ashram. You don't want a guru, you're not looking for a guru. And there it comes, and it comes in one moment. It comes so fast. And but whatever you did before was all valid. Otherwise, it couldn't have come so fast. All the therapy and all that had its place, and it needed to be there to prepare you.
Absolutely.
To be open for that moment. So it's always this paradox. In some ways, it's like with the whole spiritual journey, in some ways we can't do anything because it's all the grace of God and the grace of the divine spirit. And on the other hand, we have to do whatever we can to be free and to let go and to love it, so it's the right, that balance between letting go and full on intention and readiness and in some ways effort and then it just happens. Like when the right time comes, it happens. When you find your guru, you find your guru finds you. There's nothing you can do really,
Yes. Yes.
So it's like with everything on a spiritual journey to find that balance and to trust, that we are there at the right place at the right time. Follow the signs, like you did,
Absolutely. And yeah, you mentioned something very important that I just wanted to highlight, which is that the emotional and psychological work that we do along with the spiritual work. And that's really, really important, because the spirituality is going to give us that freedom. It's going to give us that experience on the deepest and the highest and the fullest level. But the dilemma with that is that in order to live with that, we have to live always 100% consciously. And most of us know that while that's a beautiful goal and a beautiful ideal, that most of us tend to slip into subconscious patterning as the days, as the day goes by, from morning till evening, as days go by. And when we're in our subconscious programming, what comes out is all of the subconscious stuff. And so this is where a lot of the work is also very, very beautiful, to really help look at those patterns and to help heal those patterns on a very deep level, so that even on that deeper subconscious, unconscious level, the patterns themselves get resolved and you become free of them. And the guru, the grace of the guru. And the guru does find you. I ended up with my feet stuck to the floor of the ashram, unable to walk out.
What a story.
Literally.
What a story.
After I met Puja Swamiji the very first time, I was walking out of the ashram intending that we were going to go up to the mountains, and I would stay, but I would stay when we got back from the mountains. And I get about halfway out of the ashram where I'm going to turn to walk out, and my feet literally stick to the ground like crazy glue. And I cannot get them up. And it didn't matter what I did, could not get those feet off the ground. And it wasn't until I finally realized that I was supposed to be walking back in the direction I had come from, back into Swamiji's room, not out of the ashram, that my feet actually came up from the ground. So the whole story is there in the book. I don't want to tell it all and ruin it, but that's the power, though. That is the power. You think about nature. What is it that makes a caterpillar suddenly climb a tree and weave itself into a cocoon to get liquefied and become a butterfly? I don't know. But surely it's something just as powerful as getting your feet stuck to the ground in an ashram, right? And so I feel like there's this amazing power in the universe and intelligence in the universe that's trying to show us the path and the way. And we just have to listen.
There's this beautiful line in one of Miten's songs, and once we had a meeting with Satchinandan Swami, who is a Hare Krishna. You know Satchinandan Swami, most
Yes, of course.
And we met him in Vrindavan, and he was telling us his life story, and then he said, so tell me about yours. And Miten said, oh, best I just sing to you. And so Miten sang Second Chance, which has the line in it, embrace your anger, your lust, and your greed. That's how we drop the things that we don't need. And Satchidanand Swami said, yeah, what do you mean by that? I'm celibate, and what do you mean by that? How does that work? And so I wanted to just put that to you. How do you embrace your lust, your greed, your sexual, because now you're celibate, you took the vow, and how does that feel? You're young, you're beautiful, you're full of life. So how do you navigate that, or did you have to navigate it? Because I'm not at that part of the book yet. I think you talk about it.
I do talk about it, but I'll give you a preview.
Yeah.
So it went through phases. In the beginning, when I first had this incredible experience of awakening on the banks of Ganga, it felt literally like God had come through me with a vacuum cleaner. And with a vacuum cleaner, with one of those attachments, that gets like into the little corners and the nooks and crannies and sucks out all the dust from everywhere. And it really felt like everything that was in me that was not conducive to living this life, God just sucked it out. And so whether it was desire for a bagel or sex or anything in between, it all just was, by God's grace, through absolutely no merit of my own. It was taken away. And then, it was great for a few years, literally. I mean, it lasted a few years of just this experience of such fullness and such completeness that there just was no space in it at all for desire of any sort. It wasn't just lust. It was literally a desire for anything. I mean, it was, sit on the ground and eat mung dal and chapatis, great. Like desire for anything on any level. Food, possessions, sensual pleasures, anything. Movies, all of it just was literally kind of vacuumed out very nicely. And then, I really want to emphasize it was not due to something I did, because if I had that magic wand, I would very happily share it. But then a few years later, a situation arose that I won't spoil the story because it's a fun story in the book, but where those feelings were aroused again. And suddenly there they were. And I actually went to Puja Swamiji and told him. And it's a cute story. He told me a very funny story, actually about the sage Nadaji, and how when the sage Nadaji was overcome with desire for the daughter of this king, and kind of the very loving trick that Lord Vishnu played on him in order to save him from being swept up into the veil in the arms of Maya. So he told me that story, but he also gave me very, very powerful meditation techniques to work with the energy. And that's really the core thing, is it's just energy. And most of us have become so accustomed to thinking that we are sort of slaves to the energy of our body. There's a rumble in our stomach, we have to eat food. There's a rumble somewhere else, oh, we have to have sex. There's this, I want this. As though there's just a wave of energy, of kind of chemical and electrical energy in the body. And we think we're supposed to just jump, react, respond, give into it. And the meditation techniques that he gave me were techniques of working with that energy. It's not about repression. It's not about suppression. It's not about denial or badness. It's just about a recognition of the energy and then raising that energy upward and actually bringing it into your heart. And it's a very, very powerful practice because, again, it's just energy. And if you can not be a slave to every call of the body, of the mind, you learn how to work with the energies in a way that's really powerful. It's why in India, for example, people fast. Not that they're never going to eat again, but they fast. Why people stay awake all night, chanting, meditating. Not that they'll never sleep again. It's why even married couples, frequently when they go on spiritual pilgrimage, they'll abstain. Because that abstinence, even temporary, gives you the opportunity to recognize the energy of the body and what the alternative ways of working with it are. Usually there's hunger, we just feed it. There's fatigue, we just go to sleep. There's sexual energy, we give into it. But if you didn't, if you just saw them and recognized them as energies in the body, what other possibilities are there for opening the different chakras, opening the different energy centers, clarity in the mind? People feel, when people do fasts, they feel so clear in the mind when we're not bogged down with food. And again, it's not that food is bad. It's not that you never should eat again. It's just that temporary abstinence from it gives you this window into, wow, what's it like when my body is not bogged down with food? And in the same way, by taking those energies that arise and being able to raise them up, you're able to really tap into this incredible power of the energetic body.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That was a beautiful key. That's beautiful. Thank you. It's just taking a moment. Like we often react so quickly to everything, and just to take a step back. Yeah. And beloved Pujya Swamiji, we are so blessed to have met him and to actually, I would like in the end of our time, which is kind of coming up soon, I guess, I would like to actually chant the mantra Om Purnam that I received the melody from him. He's such an amazing, beautiful singer, and and when our beloved Shamdas left his body, and you honored Shamdas in the Kumbh Mela,
yes,
and then Swamiji chanted Om Purnam in this particular melody, and then it just went into my heart. So if that's okay, I would like to do that in the end.
Beautiful.
And if you want to share more about Pujya Swamiji, some people said, "Who's the guru? Who's the guru?"
Wow.
I saw some.
So the guru. So the word guru, it's important because I know most of the people watching this are most likely not Indians. And in the Western world, there's such an aversion to this idea of the guru, as though somehow you were giving up your free will, giving up your independence, as though somehow being a disciple means you're a slave, that you've surrendered your free will. And it's not like that at all, of course, as you know and I know. What it is surrendering to the light rather than surrendering to ignorance. We're already surrendered. Make no mistake about that. We're already slaves, but most of us are slaves to our own egos, to our own mental patterning, to our own way of thinking, to our own way of acting. we're not really living every moment in conscious free will. We're already slaves. And what a guru gives us is the opportunity of surrendering to light and truth rather than surrendering to darkness and falsehood. And that's literally what the word means. The word means the remover of darkness and the bringer of light. And that darkness is the darkness of ignorance. It's not the darkness of who you are. Who you are is pure and perfect and divine. But ignorance, because we forget that who we are is pure and perfect and divine. And we identify falsely. And that ignorance causes suffering. And it causes us to bring suffering to others. So the guru brings the light of truth, the truth of who you are, and shines that light on you so you can see who you really are. My guru is Puja Swami Chidanand Saraswati. He's the president of Parmarth Niketan ashram, which is the ashram I live in. And to me, what's so extraordinary about him is, in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna gives us three streams of yoga. Yoga, of course, means union. And he gives us 3 streams of union. Gyan yoga, union through wisdom. Bhakti yoga, union through love and devotion. And karma yoga, union through action. And Puja Swamiji is by far the most beautifully integrated of those 3 streams of anyone I've ever met. He really is like a confluence of those 3 streams. He is engaged morning till evening in service. And our core way of being in the world is service. It's all about service. It's all about seva. But it's about service that is united into the stream with wisdom and love. So it's not service just to serve. It's not action just to act. It's not us over here serving them over there. It's such a deep awareness of oneness with the divine that everyone is self. And that's really how he moves through the world. There's no distinction for him between his own physical body and the baby bird that's just been given birth to in a nest in his garden, who might be eaten by the cat who also lives in his garden. And so he sleeps outside with a stick to scare away the cat, so that it doesn't eat the baby bird in the nest. In the same way that if you had an ailment or an injury, you break your leg, you sleep with it up in a little thing. So he's going to sleep outside because he has to keep the cat, whom he also loves, away from the bird, because they're all self. And the projects, and whether it's for children or women or disaster victims or water or trees, villagers, sick people, it's all service, but it's service of self. He doesn't have this sense of like us as the ones who have serving those who don't. It's all about the self serving the self. And it's an extraordinary presence to be in, because whatever he's doing, it's like meditation. And that's his teaching always, is let every action, every moment, everything you do it with wisdom, awareness of the truth of who you are, with love for the creator, love for the creation, which includes you and all. And do it with yoga, union. And of unity. So yeah, he's indescribable and just such an amazing being into whose presence grace brought me.
I know we could talk for hours. And I think this is just such a beautiful, this is beautiful completion, pinnacle.
Yeah.
Moving up the chakras.
Yes.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Sadhviji. And I mean, you just have to read the book, because there's so much in there, and it's also just really entertaining if you want a good novel. Because I always need more practical. I'm not such a philosophical person that I could read scriptures. It's not so easy for me. But books like this are so inspiring, and so like these nuggets, this one sentence which you needed to hear at that time, said in exactly that way. And you've heard that sentence or that concept many times, but this time it lands. It's that kind of book, like it's there's going to be so much insight in there for you, and I'm so happy that I got still at least half of the book to look forward to. And I'm so happy I can look forward to seeing you again. It's been kind of a long time.
Much too long.
And like I said, I would like to, is there anything else you want to say because I think maybe just chant the mantra and then we just could end in silence, which is really, I think, the nicest.
It's perfect. The only last thing to just say is I love you. And I'm so happy to be with you, and so much love to Miten as well. And just, you're such precious lights on this planet and in this universe. And I'm so deeply grateful that we have all been brought together.
Totally. And it's incredible in a way, the difference and the similarity of our spiritual paths. Yeah. And so many people are saying, name of the book, can you please put something? And
Hollywood it's Hollywood to the Himalayas.
Yes.
I can write it in here. Actually, somebody just wrote it.
No, people have written it.
Yes.
And McKenna also put the link again in the chat where you can get it and everything. It's actually in the post. It's in the description of the post, but let's put it also in the chat so you can see it there too. So, and also once this gets posted, that you can watch it later or tell your friends about it, there's also going to be the links in the copy where you can get it. So it's easy to find.
Yes. And as I said, Amazon has it already. So you can just go to Amazon and search.
So you actually can get it already. Like
you can get
it.
You can order it now, and then it'll arrive in your house on the 3rd of August. So you get like the first copies, I guess.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So thank you so much. And in deep love and appreciation, we chant this mantra together. It's the mantra. Would you like to say what it means?
Sure. So the mantra means that, the capital T, that is whole and full and perfect and infinite, divine. And this, which has been created out of that, is therefore also infinite and full and whole and divine. It's the spiritual equivalent of kind of mathematics 101, where we learn infinity minus 10 is infinity. Infinity divided by 7 billion, infinity. And so this mantra reminds us that because that, the divine capital T, that is infinite, and we have been created of that infiniteness, of that perfection. So we are infinite and perfect and whole.
Beautiful. Purnamada Purnamida Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Namaste. Instagram.